Hey y'all, howdy, welcome to One for the Books. I'm Sandra Broadwell, and today we're going to talk about dragons. Today, February 10th, is the Lunar New Year, which is the Chinese holiday, and today kicks off the Year of the Dragon. I don't really know anything about the Lunar New Year, but I just thought this would be a fun opportunity to talk about all of the dragon books on my TBR or on my radar, just dragon books that I am intrigued by or have read before and can make some recommendations on. I haven't read a lot of these, but I have read some of them, so I'll give my opinions where relevant. For the most part, I kept this to adult novels only. I excluded YA, so you won't see things like Aragon or Dragon Riders of Pern or A Wizard of Earthsea, things like that, because that just opens up a whole nother can of worms. But I have 20 different books or series on this list, so let's fly in. I arranged all of these books and series in order of oldest to newest, based on the year that the first book in the series was published. So, to kick off, we have none other than The Hobbit by j.r.r. Tolkien. The Hobbit was published in 1937. This is the prequel to the Lord of the Rings series. I'm sure I don't need to pitch to you all what the Lord of the Rings is about. It's obviously a huge cinematic universe now. I will say the Hobbit book is nothing like the movies, the Hobbit movies at least. It's definitely well worth the read, and even for people who may have struggled to get into the Lord of the Rings series, The Hobbit is much shorter and more succinct, and to me personally, I found it was much easier to get into than The Fellowship of the Ring. If you haven't read The Hobbit yet, I would highly recommend giving it a go, even if you didn't feel like the trilogy was for you. Next up, we have The Dragonbone Chair, which was originally published in 1988. This is a trilogy by Tad Williams, and it is a very classic fantasy kitchen boy goes on a quest to find a magical sword and save the realm type of story. I have not read this one, but Patrick Leo talks about this one quite often and how monumental and influential it was for many other fantasy writers since then. So it is definitely considered one of the classics. Next up on the list, we have Guards by Terry Pratchett. This is part of the Discworld series, which is like 41 different books in total, but Guards is the first book of a trilogy within that series called The City Watch. I honestly don't know what this one is about too much, but it has a dragon on the cover, and Discworld is just known to be like a really silly, absurdist sort of fantasy series that touches on a lot of deeper social themes, but through the lens of comedy. If you're a fan of Douglas Adams, I am told you would also be a fan of Terry Pratchett. Next up on the series, we have Dragon Wing, which was originally published the year I was born, 1990. This is a 7-book series by an author duo, Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, and I have heard that this is also a wonderful overlooked series of classics that more people should read. So I put it on my radar. I haven't read it. Basically, this is a story of 4 realms divided. We have sky, stone, fire, and water, so very Avatar: The Last Airbender type of magic system, classic. Apparently only those who have crossed the Death Gate know of the existence of the other realms. So definitely intrigued to check this one out at some point soon. First published in 1996, we have A Song of Ice and Fire, starting with A Game of Thrones. This is another one that I'm sure I don't need to pitch to you. It was a really epic television series that most people watched. j.r.r. Martin is one of the people who popularized grimdark fantasy. He's famous for books having a lot of different point of view characters. There are 5 books published and 7 total books planned. This is one of the fantasy series that is considered in the Bermuda Triangle, as Patrick Leo said recently, that you never know if it's going to be finished or not, but I've heard that the series is well worth getting into, even if it never concludes entirely, just because the writing is so good. The characters are so believable and enthralling. This is a series about the country of Westeros and a number of families that are vying for power within that country. It's heavy in political intrigue and deep character development. Then we have His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik, or the Temeraire series. This series has 9 books total, the last of which was published in 2016. This is an alternate history of the Napoleonic Wars if both sides had dragon riders in their army. armies. So I love that concept. In this series, the dragon riders bond closely with their dragons and can communicate with them, and supposedly has some really great character relationships. Next, we have the Rainwild Chronicles by Robin Hobb, the first of which was published in 2009. This is one of the 5 series that make up the realm of the Elderlings, and I believe this is the 3rd or 4th series within that. So I don't think this is a starting point for the series, but it definitely is about dragons, so I did want to mention it in this video. In this one, dragons have started to be born weak and deformed because of pollution and toxins in this river that they live nearby, and it's about a quest to return the dragons to their mythical homeland that no one is even quite sure exists. Then we have the Memoirs of Lady Trent series, starting with A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. I read this series in 2022 and I absolutely fell in love with it. This is a series that I would highly recommend for fans of Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. It's very similar type vibe about a scholarly woman who is trying to basically make a guide about dragons. They haven't been studied extensively before, and she travels all over the world to study different types of dragons. It also has some really great adventures. It has some really great characters, a little bit of romance here and there. It's just a complete package, and the main character, Isabella, is just a firecracker that I really related to. The Rage of Dragons, a series called The Burning by Evan Winters. This is an African-inspired epic fantasy that is set, I believe, in a military academy and a young man who joins the war efforts on a quest for revenge. I have heard that this is super gripping, super fast-paced, and I can't wait to give it a try. Then we have The Bone Ships, a series called The Tide Child that was first published in 2019. This is about 2 nations at war. Both sides have been building their ships out of the bones of extinct dragons, and then it becomes known that a dragon was spotted in a faraway land. Everyone had thought they were extinct, and both sides see this as an opportunity to turn the tide of the war. Also in 2019, we have A Chorus of Dragons, which starts with The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. This series has 5 books. I'm told it's quite an intense read with a lot of characters and a lot of political intrigue, and you need to have your big brain energy with you when you read these books to follow along with everything that is happening. The main character in this one is the long-lost son of a treasonous prince who is destined to destroy the empire. Then we have a series called The Aurelian Cycle, which starts with Fireborn by Rosaria Munda. This is a trilogy that takes place many years after a revolution that kicked off during the main character's childhood, in which the regime was overthrown, and now anyone, even low-born children, have the opportunity to test and become a part of the governing class of dragon riders. The 2 main characters both become dragon riders and are good friends. As their relationship starts to change, members from the previous regime rise up and try to overthrow the new order, and they have to work together to stop it. From what I understand, there's also a bit of a romance between the 2 main characters in this one. Then we have The Priory of the Orange Tree, also known as the Roots of Chaos series. This is just 1 book and a prequel. The prequel is called A Day of Fallen Night. This one has 3 different main characters, or 3 different points of view. One is a queen without an heir who is trying to hold on to power, a mage who is secretly trying to protect the queen, and a dragon rider from across the sea. And this book, from what I understand, has just a really epic scope. Then we have a book called Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer. Our main character in this one is attending an academy for warrior mages, and all of them are vying for the chance to become a dragon rider. In the meantime, there is also a Dark Lord rising to threaten the world. The Miss Percy's Guide series. This is so far 2 books. I'm uncertain if there's going to be more books or not. I couldn't find any info about that. But the first one is Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. And the main character, Miss Percy, is called a spinster and a wallflower, but her life is uprooted when her late uncle leaves her a dragon egg as part of her inheritance. And Dragons are not known to exist in this world. This one is also coded as a cozy mystery. So for all of you mystery girlies out there, this might be a good one to check out. Then we have the Bloodsworn Saga by John Gwynne. This is an ongoing series that starts with the Shadow of the Gods. This world has been defined by the gods warring themselves into extinction, which broke the world. Now monsters roam the earth, and the fate of the world will be shaped by 3 different point of view characters: a huntress, a noblewoman, and a slave. Then we have a series called The Bound and the Broken. This is another ongoing series that currently has 3 books and starts with Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. This is your classic fantasy young man thrust into a war unwillingly. From what I've heard, it's just every classic fantasy trope that you love, but with a modern spin and just done really, really well. So nothing to complain about there. This next one is a really interesting one called When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. This is a standalone novel, and it is about an event that occurred in 1955 called the Mass Dragoning. It was an event in which women across the world turned into dragons all at once. And not every woman did, but a lot of them did, and just wreaked havoc on the world, apparently. It's unclear why this happened or why it happened only to some women and not to others. And it's set several years after this event. A young woman who is trying to reckon with this, her aunt is one of the women who became a dragon and her mother did not. It's just about her trying to figure out more about this, but it is forbidden to talk about. It's just a very unique story, it sounds like, and I'm really interested to give this one a shot. The 19th out of the 20th of series that I'm going to talk about today, we can't talk about modern dragon books without mentioning Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing took the world by storm last year. It is a romantasy series set in a military academy with a young woman who is reluctantly forced into being a dragon rider. I've heard a lot of really mixed things about this one, even more mixed things about the sequel, but there is planned to be 5 books in this series overall. This is the one that has the least amount of interest for me out of this whole video, just because I'm not typically a romantasy girly, but I have heard a lot of booktubers that I personally like talk about how much they like this book, so I still have at least some level of intrigue about it. And then finally, I wanted to mention a new release, an upcoming book that hasn't come out yet, but has really piqued my interest for the upcoming year, and that is The Fireborn Blade by Charlotte Bond. This is coming out on May 28th, and this is about a slighted knight who is trying to redeem her honor by recovering this legendary blade from a dragon called the White Lady. It is a novella, so it's pretty short, and it is apparently sapphic as well. So that just sounds really intriguing, and I'd love to take a look when it becomes available in a couple of months. So those are all of the dragon books on my TBR, or at least some that I have and haven't read that I thought I would share with you guys. Please let me know in the comments down below what your favorite dragon book is, or maybe some that you think definitely should have been on this list that I missed out on for not including. Thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out with me for a little bit today. As always, please be kind, read books, and hit the subscribe button below for more bookish content to come. I'll see you soon.